Hello, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, We're Not Stumped. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I welcome Hugh Boyle. Hugh is a career-long advertising and marketing industry professional. His background includes being the Global Chief Digital Officer at WPP agencies and also the Executive Officer at Omnicom agency. But after a long period of ill health in 2021, he had a life-changing experience in March of 2022. And we're going to get into that and a lot more today with Hugh. So first of all, Hugh, thank you so much for being a guest on the We're Not Stumped podcast.
It's my great pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
I'm very excited. We had a little bit of a conversation before we started recording, and your background just fascinates me, and what you're doing now really fascinates me. But I want to talk about you, and we always start the podcast with a segment I call In Your Own Words. So I'd love our listeners to know a little bit more about Hugh Boyle.
Okay, so I'm Hugh. As you can probably tell, although I live in Dallas, Texas, my accent is not from around these parts. I'm British, grew up in the Midlands of England, worked in London for way over 20 years, and then moved to the States 11 years ago. I actually moved from London to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Dallas through my work. And arrived in Dallas and seem not to be going anywhere right now. We've made it home, and our kids, our two little kids love it. I have two older kids and two little kids. Two little kids love it. So here we are. And then my amputee story is kind of extraordinary in a sense that it all started with something that should have been very routine and very small. So in September 2021, I went to hospital for a surgery on a really old ankle injury, and old, I mean 10 years prior. And I had 2 titanium screws in my foot that I knew after a period of years I'd most likely need to get changed around. So my foot had become uncomfortable during COVID year, so I ended up being referred for surgery to get those 2 screws removed and a couple more put in their place, and a few other bits and pieces. And that surgery, well, to say it didn't go well would be an understatement. It seemingly didn't go well in the surgery because I was meant to be down for an hour and a half. But when I got back up from the surgery, I could just tell by the light in the sky, it was much later in the day than it should have been, and spoke to a nurse and she said it was 10 minutes before 4, which meant I'd been down for nearly 7 hours. And so we kind of began to understand what had gone on in the surgery in terms of removing the metalwork. Anyway, so it seemed that it was complete and so on. Off I went home. And the long story short is effectively that my foot simply didn't get better. I suffered with a bunch of kind of external wound infections. It stayed incredibly swollen, incredibly painful for that whole time. And then just shortly before Christmas, and I remember it so clearly, my overarching health, which has always been really good, just fell off a cliff. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, lost pounds and pounds in weight in a short matter of weeks. And were I not conscious that it was almost certainly to do with my leg, I really would have thought I was seriously ill, and I would have been deeply concerned about what that was. So my wife then implored me to get a second opinion on my foot, and as you'll come to understand, without her doing that, I may not be kind of sitting here telling the story right now. So in early January, went to see this extraordinary doctor, extraordinary in that he was ex-military and he was the head of orthopedics during Operations Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And in his own words, I'll paraphrase him slightly, he's seen a lot of effed up lower limbs. But actually, given his background, I felt really reassured by that. But in that very first consultation, he said, without having looked at a CT scan or an X-ray, he looked at my leg and said, look, I think you're able to hear this, but it feels to me that it's unlikely you're going to keep your leg. Now, I was not expecting that at all. So that was quite the shock. The next day, I went in for nuclear medicine bone scans, which revealed that I actually had osteomyelitis, chronic osteomyelitis in 3 places in my ankle, my calcaneus, but the worst was rapidly rising up through my tibia at a rate of knots. And the kind of mood in the room changed somewhat at that time. And I kind of, as the weeks went by and after my surgery, I then particularly began to understand it, that I was red alert, sepsis watch. And he had to remove my leg at just below the knee, effectively to save my life. And the grade of all 3 infections in my leg was sufficiently bad that if any of it had jumped into my bloodstream, I would have been a goner in maybe 45 minutes. So yeah, that was whilst dealing with the fact I was about to be an amputee, I was also dealing with the fact that it was the best choice of the 2 that were before me. And that was in many respects as life-changing as losing my leg. And in fact, 2 days after my surgery, I moved to a rehab hospital. And that evening, a doctor came in to see me holding my notes, and we chatted for a minute. And he was quite an informal guy. And he just said, look, I want to say something to you. He said, and I'm kind of speaking kind of off-piste a little bit here. He said, last week in a different hospital at which I work, we lost a guy younger than you with a less severe bone infection than you. And I mean, we lost him. And he said, so you're a very, very lucky guy. And then he said, so if I come in here and you're feeling sorry for yourself for only losing half a leg, you and me ain't going to get on very well.
Wow.
I was like, wow.
Yeah.
But I loved him saying that. I did say to him, they didn't teach you that in medical school. But I kind of loved that because it was a real jolt. And I remember sitting in that room and looking out the window and really contemplating these 2 things in parallel. One was, you're looking down at the place where your leg used to be. You don't recognize your new physical configuration. And that's such a complex thing to deal with. But all the while thinking it would be that or not being here for my wife and 4 children. Yeah. And like I say, had Mary, my wife, not encouraged me or made me, to be quite frank, get a second opinion when she did, another week or 2 weeks, may have been 2 weeks too late. So the upshot of all of that is you kind of feel like a lucky amputee. It doesn't make the pain and the challenges of recovery and all that any better, but it did offset it to quite an extent. And that's been really important to me in my recovery.
Yeah, and you said you were very lucky to be here. I think that's how you said it. And I know that you've used that luck for many great things, and I can't wait to talk about that. But how was that originally when you were laying in the bed? And then you have, as you said, your family. How was the reaction from the family, and how did they support you through everything?
Well, it's kind of interesting in that, my wife was just extraordinary. And I knew she was going to be. But there was a long period where my leg was really bad. There was a period where they'd attached like a septic drain to my leg. My doctor had said to Mary, look, you need to empty that twice a day, and I need you to measure what comes out of it, describe what comes on my notes app. So we ended up finding an old baby bottle that she had to empty this thing into. And she, I know we say in sickness and in health and for better and for worse and stuff, but you don't expect to be doing that. But she just did it with such good grace and positivity. And we unbelievably were able to have a few laughs through some of those moments. So she was extraordinary. I live 4,400 miles away from my mum. And it was really, really hard for my mum, for me to be going through such an ordeal and for her to be so far away, as it was from my brother and my older children. My eldest daughter and her partner, there was a period of months where we I would interact with them at least, I mean, multiple times a day over text or chat or whatever. And things like that really kept me going. And then they flew over because she needed to kind of see what the new configuration was and how I was doing. And, you know, so she would be kind of feeling more comfortable with it. And then my little kids, you know, your little kids, they just want their daddy back. I mean, and I'd been laid up from the September through to the March. And my amputation was on the 4th of March, March 4th. And I rapidly turned that from a date into an instruction, March 4th. I changed the spelling of fourth to F-O-R-T-H, March 4th. And it became my kind of guiding light that that's what I was going to do from that day was March 4th. And I've told this story many times, but I'm not a crier. Sport makes me cry, but I don't cry easy. But there was this one extraordinary moment the night I got home. So we have this dog, who's an English Springer Spaniel, albeit he's the family pet. He's not, he's my dog. And when we'd gotten home, Mary said, look, I'm leaving the dog in his kennel just because he's going to be, I've been in hospital for a couple of weeks. It's going to be so boisterous and so on. But actually, when everyone had gone to bed, I said, oh, can you get the dog out? And the dog, who normally would have been just crazy, just very kind of meekly came towards me and jumped upon the couch as if he knew I needed gentleness around me, and just kind of did the dog thing of looking up at you. And I realized in that moment that all he wanted was me to take him for a walk. That was all. And in the dog, I realized that that was all anybody wanted. My wife just wanted Hugh back. My kids just wanted dad back. And it made me cry. But it also really galvanized my recovery and the enthusiasm with which I embraced that. And, you know, you get given a lot of deadlines by your physiotherapist, like, we'll have you walking by here, we'll have you walking upstairs by then, and so on. But every time I heard that, I thought, I'm going to beat that, I'm going to beat that, I'm going to beat that. And it was very much triggered by the dog, and the dog making me realize that actually, when your family love you, doesn't matter that you've got a leg missing. They just want the very sense of you to be back. And it kind of went forward from there. But no, everyone was incredible. As I say, I felt really sorry for my mom, because, you know, she'll kill me for saying this on the podcast, but she's 80 years of age, but she's still my mom, you know, and she still thinks and reacts as if I was, you know, 5, let alone 55.
Yep, absolutely. And you talked about your recovery, and I was interested in some of the prosthetic journeys you went through, and certainly shout out to your mom. And I didn't hear that part. I wasn't supposed to listen to. I hope she does listen.
Well, I'll give you someone else to give a shout out to, and I know poor guy has heard this 1,000 times. My prosthetist, his name is Mr. Dave Hook. Yeah. If there is a better name for a prosthetist than Hook, I don't know what it is. I mean, what I found really hard was the fact that, you know, there is so much trauma in your stump, and, you know, 50, 60 staples and all that sort of stuff. You're not going to go near a prosthetic for potentially 3 months. So I came home from hospital in a wheelchair, with a wheelchair. And the adapting to, you know, everything around balance and standing up and sitting down and all of that sort of stuff with one leg. And it was I'm left with my left leg, which was my less dominant leg. I'm kind of very right-sided. And and they say, look, just whatever you do, don't fall over, because if you fall on your stump, you're going to do it. Now, I never fell on my stump, but believe you me, I fell over more than enough times. And I found the period of time being in a chair, well, I found it really, really humbling. And as we talk about what I'm doing now, it was in no small part informed by how people react to you when you're in a wheelchair than when you're not. So that was really tough. I had an incredible physiotherapist who, he was just a young boy. He's like barely older than my son. But I was wheeled in there a week after my surgery, pretty grumpy guy in a wheelchair, and he figured me out quickly, and pushed me really, really hard. And I was super grateful for that. And again, if you've never had any experience of ill health and hospitals before, the thing that you notice more than anything, sure, the doctors are all exceptional, but they aren't exceptional. The people who are truly exceptional are the occupational therapists, the physiotherapists, the young people that don't earn the money. And it had me understand what the word vocation truly means. And certainly my both of my physiotherapists, they really cared about me, and really cared that I recovered. In fact, just as my 3 months of physio was coming to an end, my physio was also leaving the practice that he was at, and moving out of state. And I knew he was a Scotch whiskey connoisseur. And I thought to myself, I've got the best imaginable present for this guy, given what he's just taught me to do. So I bought him a bottle of 20-year-old Johnny Walker.
Oh, what a great gift.
Yeah.
As you talk about, you said something that really stuck with me. It's a humbling experience. And I know there's listeners on this podcast right now that may be going through their own humbling experience. How did you get through that? What kind of advice would you give someone going through those experiences?
Well, I think the first thing to say is your trauma is your toolbox. And what I mean by that is everything that happens helps you deal with the next thing you have to deal with, however bad the thing is that you're dealing with, right? And I really felt the sequence of things, and you do feel yourself kind of toughening up through it. And I felt that I cope with each next thing better because of having dealt with the thing immediately before. Look, I would probably have told you that I'd gone through some hard things in my life before my amputation. I had not. They weren't even the H of hard compared to what you go through. I would say to any amputee, I would say so many positive things about the amputee community and so on. But the reality is there is a month or so there that's really tough, but you will get through it, and people will care for you through it, and people will love you through it. But it is pretty tough. I remember seeing my reflection in a doorway, missing a leg. My surgery was on a Friday. This was on a Sunday. In a wheelchair, missing a leg. You just never expect to see yourself like that, and you really have to dig deep to recover from that. But I felt that. This kind of sounds like I'm overstating it. I felt like it stripped me back and helped me build back up again. And actually, the thing I had for the first time in my life was time. So from the surgery in the September through to the March, I hadn't walked unaided, and I'd spent a lot of time in bed and stuff like that. And then from the March through to the June, once I'd had my amputation, I'd never had that amount of time in my life at any time before. And it really forces you to sit and think and contemplate and so on. And yeah, I felt it was all incredibly humbling. You can't not feel humbled when you're sitting there with one leg, unable to stand up and having to be taken to a shower by an occupational therapist. Your ego is gone when that happens. You have to just rely on the care of other people. But inevitably, you have to build yourself back up again. And it was, for me, and particularly with having this near-death kind of component, I did sit and think, if I had died, what would I be proud of having done? And what would I regret not having done, or regret things that I had done in my past? Because that gives you the opportunity to do things differently on the other side of it. And there's no one alive, but at least if they were telling the truth, would say, "Oh, there was nothing I wanted to kind of clean up." But it really helped me reset. And again, in no small part, being so beholden to people whose paths mine and theirs would never have crossed before. My physio, my OT, and stuff like that. And I relied on these people so much. And that's humbling. That's a really humbling thing. And then the most important thing to say to anyone who is about to have an amputation is, and this is a great moment, my wife kept saying to me, look, join a Facebook group, and multiple times a day in the couple of weeks before my surgery. Now, that's not me to do that. Like, you have to write a profile about yourself and post it and get accepted and all of that sort of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that, being grumpy. And then actually one night I did it, but I tell you, without fear of contradiction, I did it to get her off my case. So I joined this Facebook group, wrote my profile, pressed submit. It barely felt like my finger had not lifted off the submit button when my inbox ping, 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 ping. And it was people responding. And what was really helpful to me, there was a lot of guys of about my age who were just saying, you've got this, dude. Brother, we're behind you. You've got this. And I mean, saying, like, I'm not a crier. I found that really, really empowering, really moving in such great number. And all it was words of absolute encouragement. And then, in fact, on the day of my surgery, some of those same guys messaged me to say, how did it go? They'd taken a note of when my surgery was going to be, so they could follow up. That told me something so important, and that is, we're all in this together. Right? And the amputee community, as I've come to further understand it over the last 2 years, is a fabulous community of really positive, really motivating, often really funny people. I mean, you get your leg chopped off, they go to humor pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I met or electronically met more incredible people in that 3 or 4 days than I could probably remember in the 3 or 4 years previously. And it was fuel to me as I went through it. And to this day, I'm eternally grateful to those people who just jumped up on board and wished me all the best,
That's a fantastic story. So being able to connect with the community is something that you would definitely recommend. I would take it however you can.
Yeah. And I immediately got a subscription to Amplitude magazine, and dove in, and because I don't know, your kind of natural disposition is to feel uncomfortable going into such a new world that you wouldn't otherwise go into. But after that Facebook experience, I just thought, I feel welcome. And I felt you feel so alone dealing with this thing, and you put out your strong side to everybody everyone who's talking to you. But actually, it was a bunch of guys who called me bro and dude and brother that really steeled my resolve as I went through it. It was so I can't stress how important a moment that was for me. So a bunch of strangers and a dog. That's what you need.
Well, I know what you're doing now, and I highly respect, and I can't wait to talk about it. Was that a brainchild of when you had that time off and you had the time to think about what I want to do next? And then let's start talking about it. So I'd only worked in advertising from the age of 21, 22. And it's one of those very big, very small industries, or in a sense that it's often very inward looking, and there's a lot to understand and learn that's about the industry and the community of the industry as much as the job you do, right? So when you've only ever worked in that environment, it's kind of what you understand and understand very well. But the one thing I did understand incredibly well was that it was not a place where, in my experience, those with disabilities were made welcome. Why? Because they're not there. They're not in the industry. I looked back over 30 years and realized that across both sides of the Atlantic, on 2 huge organizations, I'd only ever worked with one person with a physical disability, right? Now, there is no law of probability that says that's okay, right? There's something there. And, I could spend an hour talking about the things that I think it is, but it's kind of not worth it. What it's worth doing is trying to put it right. But so it started from a thought, which was essentially, what the hell am I going to do? I always had like high touch jobs, tons of traveling, tons of meetings, tons of hotels. And the one thing I knew was, however well I recovered, I was never going back to that. So I was kind of like, what the hell am I going to do? And then thought about this one guy, Mike, who
was the only disabled guy I'd ever worked with. And then I asked myself one of the most, with hindsight, stupid questions I've ever asked myself. And that was, well, maybe it's because the talent's not there. So I then, again, sitting in hospital, right, 4 days after an amputation, I thought, I'm going to have a look, see if I can find disabled videographers, photographers, maybe writers, and so on. It was overwhelming. The amount of talent that's just sitting out there, not working in the advertising industry, who do incredible work. You know, I was mentioning this to you before, extraordinary videographer with cerebral palsy, you know, visually impaired writers, hearing impaired graphic designers, photographers, and it just went on and on and on. And what I thought was really important, but also quite sad, was that, you know, these people cluster on the internet. So there's a guild of disabled photographers. There's an entire community of copywriters with disabilities, and they're all just trying to be seen, all just trying to get work. And so I was like, this is incredible. The talent's there. So I thought I'd start to reach out to a few people, reached out to two in particular. But the one I'll tell you about is this kid who was a writer. I'm going to say he was vision impaired, but he was blind. He was congenitally blind and had been his entire life. He had no vision at all. And he sent me some samples of his creative writing, and it was incredible. And I'd always said to myself, well, look, let's see if it's equal to or better than. If it's equal to or better than what the industry normally produces, then it's in a good spot. His work was incredible. And I said to him, his work was incredible. And his response was to say, well, the thing is, words have been the only currency I've ever had with which to decode the world and with which to describe the world as I perceive it to other people. And that struck me like a ton of bricks, right? That's what he's got, words. And it made me think, why doesn't every advertising agency under the sun go find a video writer? Because words are what they do. So I found that all really inspirational. And then again, within the same, 48, 72 hour window, I thought, right, I'm gonna do what I can in the balance of my career to fix this. And decided that I would, which is now 2 years, we're now 2 years in, was to form a creative advertising and marketing agency, which is called Doable, with the do and the able clearly there to be seen, that would be founded and staffed as much as possible by talent with disabilities. So, you know, and now we've got web developers who are in wheelchairs. We have visually impaired creative people. We have hearing impaired artists and graphic designers. And what's really interesting in this kind of era of TikTok and so on, a lot of the talent kind of clusters around video production, content production, photography, and so on. So that was the first thing. The second thing was an understanding that actually 99% of the work that the advertising agencies do about disability, which is very, very little, by the way, you know, 1% of all primetime TV adverts feature disability, 1%, in a country where 1 in 5 families is affected by disability, right? So again, there's something there, is that the work actually that does feature disability is really bad. Yeah. And I kind of concluded pretty quickly that to be disabled in a TV commercial, you either had to be superhuman, 6'4", javelin throwing, a Paralympian, or subhuman, kid in a wheelchair with the begging bowl out, appealing for funds for the hospital that she's in, superhuman or subhuman, with nothing in between. When the truth is, disabled life is everything in between. Yeah. You know, where's the TV commercial where the family of 5 come down for breakfast in the morning to eat their cereal, and one of the kids is, I mean, it's just being kind of obvious here, but in a wheelchair. And then you don't say anything about it. There's no drum roll to say, hey, look, everybody, we featured a kid in a wheelchair. it's normal, and we normalize it because in 1 in 5 families in this country, it is normal. And disabled kids eat their breakfast like every other kid. And that's the way to do it. Too much of the advertising that features disabled people is about disability. So it's a field day right now with the Paralympics about to start. There's a lot of that. But actually what we should be seeing is disability just as a facet of life. And I'm not saying it should be 1 in 5 TV commercials. I know that will never happen. Advertising is about creating these perfect worlds that we can all aspire to be part of. But 1% is very different to 1 in 5. And there is got to be a point in between those things. There's enough ads on the TV for 3-row 7-seater cars, which is exactly what a disabled family needs to throw the wheelchair in the back. We should be seeing a commercial with the wheelchair being thrown in the back.
Yeah.
And then the other point about all of this, people watching will so get this. It's not just about being a do-gooder and doing what's right, doing something that is, we're doing it to choose an awful word at the moment, like for woke reasons. Do it because actually commercially it's a really good idea. The 61 million working age disabled adults in this country command disposable income of $480 billion, right? So why on earth aren't brands and businesses understanding, empathizing, then engaging with disabled consumers such that, you know this from being kind of in proximity to the industry. There's a term that's used a lot, brand love, right? Brand love is the currency of the marketing world, developing brand love. Well, I'll tell you this, in my experience, disabled people would love to find brands to love. But how can you love a brand whose jar you can't open, whose website you can't read, whose store you can't navigate your wheelchair through? How do you fall in love with that brand, however cool it is or however much you want to? How do you fall in love with a brand that simply doesn't respect the things that you need to consume it? And unfortunately, the ADA and the web compliance guidelines have really kind of helped in a kind of overall awareness thing. But still, only 1% of all websites in this country are accessible to all. But I tell you what, they'll all take money from everybody.
Yeah.
There's the thing. So the whole thing of setting up this agency was informed by, one, the underrepresentation of talent in the industry, and then how can you even contemplate making a TV commercial about disability without a couple of disabled people working on it? It's bananas. In any other minority group, they would not do that. Right? You cannot make an ad that targets the Hispanic community without having some Hispanic strategists and thinkers and creatives working on that thing.
Yes.
Yeah, with work that's targeted at the disabled community, no disabled people work on it. That's it.
Wow.
So that was the first thing we did. And then the second thing we did, which is the non-profit component of our company. And that was, you'll know, the world lives on data, right? You can't create a TV campaign without getting all the data and insights and research that inform it. As much as there was no advertising agency staffed by disabled people, there was no research organization focused on the 61 million disabled consumers. I mean, if one's crazy, this one's crazier still. So some of the biggest research companies in the world that are household names did not have a department or a division or even a single dedicated executive focusing on consumers with disabilities. So we set up a research foundation called the Consumers with Disabilities Research Foundation. So now if we're doing a piece of work and need some research, then we go to 500 or 1,000 disabled consumers and say, hey, what do you think of this? And they get paid for it. They get paid for doing that because my wife gets targeted all the time to do market research and get $50 at Target vouchers. But then she's white, middle class, middle-aged mom, in a nice part of town. So of course, disabled consumers must be asked about what they like, what they don't like, what they buy, don't buy, for any sense to be made out of all of this. So in summary, we've got the first creative agency staffed by disabled people and the first research company focused on consumers with disabilities.
The reason why I think it's fantastic, especially, it has to do with the employment angle. And I've been in the limb loss community for a lot of decades. I won't say how many. But at times, and I really want to ask you this question. I look at our own community, and I'll just say the limb loss community. I happen to be an ambassador for the United Cerebral Palsy here too. I just want to talk about the one I'm included in from a personal standpoint. I look at what happens within the limb loss, amputee, limb difference community, and I see how the organizations within that community, let's say an Amplitude magazine, seem to only want to spotlight someone in athletics. I think we do that to ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't like, that's why I really admire what you're doing, because when you talk about the limb loss community, there's more to it than being able to hike a mountain or to be able to put your hook on like I have right here. It's about employment, it's about relationships, it's about mental health. How do you feel about that within our own community?
Well, a statistic that is not commonly known is that some 30% of the 61 million disabled working age adults with disabilities, some 30% are in full-time employment, right? And half of those, so this kind of works out at something like 15, 20 million, are in full-time professional employment. That means banks, businesses, healthcare, education, academia, all the big grown-up businesses that smart people work in. And there's 15, 20 million people with disabilities in those places. Yet, I think when I talk to people about employees with disabilities, I believe that people see the 17-year-old kid with Down syndrome pushing the carts around Target, right? Don't believe that they see these highly skilled, high functioning people with disabilities who are in the professional workplace. I think there is a responsibility on that group, because again, the data supports that a good portion of those people won't be telling their boss that they have a disability because they'll feel it's deleterious to their career progression chances. I think we all need to toughen up on that. I think, wear your disability with pride,
yes.
and encourage your boss and your colleagues to understand that your struggle is your struggle. You don't want congratulations for it. You don't want to be told you're inspirational every day. You want to be told you're good at your job, like the guy in the next desk gets told he's good at, he's good at his job. And I mean, even if I take the girls to the grocery store, I'll have people say, "Oh, it's so inspirational to see you, managing the thing," and the girls, and I'm like, "Look, I'm just their dad. I don't need that. I don't need that." I believe that to have a disability, it's an art form. Like when we go to a hotel that I haven't done enough groundwork on how accessible the room is, right? And I have to pick my way and plot my way from the bed to the bathroom. So how I can get from the bed to the bathroom in the middle of the night in the dark on one leg, that's with the Mission Impossible music playing in the background, to navigate around a disabled life. It's an art form, but we all do it and we all get on with it because that's our stuff. Beyond that, you treat me normally. And normalcy is arguably the biggest aspiration within the community as far as I can tell. And recognize me. So we talk a lot about this kind of quirk of language that we refer to as person first. And again, you'll see the opposite of this a lot with the Paralympics. Why ever would you talk about a disabled swimmer? Well, I'm disabled and I can swim. That makes me a disabled swimmer. This woman is an athlete. Yeah. At the very least, she is a swimmer with a disability. At the very least. Then perhaps let's do the courtesy of understanding what her disability is. And then let's say she's a swimmer with a vision impairment. But actually all you'll hear in the offices and water coolers and on the news is, "Oh, did you see that disabled swimmer last night? Did you see that disabled runner last night?" No. Person first. There's something else before they're disabled.
Yeah.
And if we can get to a point where that thinking like that is on people's agendas, then the world would be a better place. But you're right in a sense that we do it to ourselves, and it the one-legged Paralympian has almost become an icon for all things, and with a really cool running blade, right? Look, life as an amputee ain't like that.
Yeah.
When you're rubbing your wife's moisturizer into your stump because the skin's flaking out, it's not like that. I think people need to understand that. And the only way we'll understand that is seeing those with disabilities thriving in normal circumstances, in normal situations.
Well, that's why, again, why I admire what you're doing. And I'm not against sports or athletics at all. I was on the Pro Bowlers Tour, and I've been on television playing basketball, golf, bowling, all that. But
yeah,
it's there's more to life than all that. And I think you just nailed it right there. And it's what your direction is with your company is it's a fantastic story. As a matter of fact, it's doable.com. Is that correct?
It's doableagency.com.
Doableagency.com. Because I've been to the site. I was just on it yesterday, and the video you've created, and I'm sure it was the team effort, is fantastic. I would definitely recommend everyone looking at that.
The girl in that video who talks about accessibility is love, she is now the head of our accessible design operation, based up in Canada. And even getting to know her, so one thing I haven't mentioned is, in the midst of all of this, I was introduced to a guy called Bob Wagner, who's congenitally deaf, had worked in our industry for a long time, had done his very best to conceal his deafness in the kind of 80s and 90s when he would have been judged for it. Very, very skilled lip reader, amazing high-tech hearing devices. But look, he's deaf. But he was, so we're an interesting guy. So I said to him, do you want to be part of this, right? Just be the one-legged guy and the deaf guy, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So he is now a partner in all of this. But what's interesting is he has been disabled since childhood. I've been disabled since 2022. However, my disability is far more visible than his. So it's really interesting to watch how people react around us. And then, of course, the talent pool is made up of people who have been disabled since childhood and people that have come to disability later. So that kind of, it really helps us with that. But that film, some of the people in that film are just inspirational. And there's a guy in there who's the painter, he has schizophrenia. Someone once said to me, yeah, but you could never have him working in an agency, in an office. And I said, well, of course you could not. Right. But that doesn't mean you can't buy his art.
Yeah.
You can't say, hey, that would make a beautiful kind of canvas for a big print ad we're producing, right? There's nothing to say that you can't invest in his skill set, even though he's not someone that you're going to bring to Madison Avenue. So yeah, there are some pretty talented people on that film.
Yeah, like I said, I would encourage everyone to go to that website. It is fantastic. I have just a couple other questions for you. I've taken a lot of your time. What is something that you maybe didn't know before you were an amputee that you learned as an amputee, and some of the advice you can give to others?
I mean, almost too many things to individualize. The first one is, however well you know yourself, and however much you think you can deal with stuff, you have no idea how deep you will go and be okay, right? When you go in for your surgery, for legal reasons, they have to say, okay, you need to tell me your name, the name of your doctor, and what you're here for today, right? So that means saying out loud, my name is Hugh Boyle, my doctor is Dane Rukic, and I'm here to have my leg amputated, right? If someone had said to me, you're going to have to do that, before, I'd go, no, I'm never going to be able to say, I wouldn't be able to say that. But you just do it and you move through the situation. Your trauma becomes your toolkit for the next thing that you have to deal with. So the first thing is, however overwhelming and intimidating it might feel, you will be okay. And I didn't know I'd be okay, but you will be okay. You know, God gives his toughest missions to his toughest warriors, right? And you will be okay. And then the second thing that I didn't know is that there is a whole world around disability with some of the best people in that you'll ever meet. I was watching on YouTube the other day. It was just like Googling comedians with disabilities. And you do wonder, I mean, some of these people are so talented and so funny. You do wonder whether, were it not for their disability, they'd be household names.
Yeah.
But again, I've said before, particularly within the amputee community, you don't have to go too far for a laugh and self-effacing thing. So we're all in this together. And I know that sounds kind of like happy clappy, but I didn't know that.
Well, I won't be clapping. That's just so you know.
Okay.
Right, there goes the humor right there.
I made an ableist comment on
I'm kidding. Just don't ask me to juggle and we'll be friends. And lastly, you have so much going on. What are you looking forward to in the future, with personally, but certainly professionally, with all the great things your organization is doing?
The one thing that we would love to be able to happen, and we'll do what we can, I would love doable to win a piece of business without the client knowing that the people working on it were disabled.
Yeah.
Right. And then for that work to win an award, or to pitch for some business without the clients knowing that the team from Doable were all disabled until after the fact. I'm not by any means saying that, we get kind of viewed favorably because of that. But I'd love to take a team of disabled creatives to an awards dinner somewhere, and for everyone else in the hall to go, bloody hell, they're all disabled, because that's the point. That's the big win, that they're as good as, if not better than, the industry at large. So that would be a great thing. And also just, so for instance, we work for the Special Olympics, who are an extraordinary organization, and a great client for us. We work with Brand USA, who's the international kind of tourist authority of the federal government. And again, they have a big pillar around accessibility and accessible travel. There's a lot of companies who are not doing anywhere close to enough. I mean, far more companies than are, who are not doing anything anywhere close to enough. So working with those companies and doing their first bit of universal design, or making their websites accessible for the first time, or casting a hearing impaired kid into one of their commercials. Each time we do something like that, an angel is born. So things like that are just like super important to us to make happen.
I can't see where it wouldn't, but I'll tell you this. This is why I was so excited to talk to you. You've already accomplished so much, and you're doing so many great things. And what you've done and your vision already helps people. You're already setting things in motion for helping.
We didn't expect this at all, but there's been a few occasions where, I don't know, on a Zoom call when, we're in kind of full presentation mode, blah, blah, blah. And someone will say, and this is the key thing of how close to everybody disability is, right? It's not steps removed. People are always one or two people with anything. So people will stop us and say, hey, can I just say thank you? I have two nieces with a disability, right? And just by having this conversation, I feel like I'm helping them. Or they'll say, my mother is disabled. You speak to so few people who can't immediately tell you of a near connection to them that is living with something. And then, of course, over the last 2 years, there's so much more attention on neurodiversity. And a lot of the conversations we're having at the moment are around autism, and making the world a better place for autistic mums and dads of autistic kids. And, that might be Walmart's sensory safe shopping hour that they do now, but we're talking to hotel groups about putting in sensory safe bedrooms with blackout blinds and sound machines and positioning them far away from as far away from the elevator and all that sort of stuff. Really easy things to do, but they achieve something. They push the envelope and make a difference.
Absolutely, as you're doing. And I just encourage anyone who's listening who may need an advertising agency to go to doableagency.com.
Yes, please do.
Absolutely. And give them an equal shake. Hugh, as you said, that's what you're hoping for. That's what you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think my kind of final thing to say is, if anyone listening happens to know of a niece or a nephew or a cousin who lives with a disability, but is passionate about photography or passionate about videography, then please, please, please put them in touch with me. Because like in any company, there are we have people at all levels, including entry level. And, if one of the things that came from doing this podcast was that we were introduced to some talented young creatives, then that'd be a great thing.
Thank you so much for your time today. I, again, admire your company and everything you're doing, and I'm very honored to have you on. So thank you so much.
It's a great pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
That was the We're Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Bolland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikeboland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.